straight to the US capital now for reaction from anti-war activist Brian Becker. Brian, good evening. It's been more than a week since the anti-American protests flared up across the Muslim world. There's still no sign of it dying down. Is this all still because of that controversial film Driving the Fury, or is there more to it?
Well, I believe the film, as offensive and as disgusting as it is, should be understood as nothing but a catalyst or a trigger. As your reporter mentioned, the pent-up frustration, anger, I would say rage, that exists not only in Pakistan but throughout the Muslim world, that's accumulated over the past decade as a consequence of the invasion of Iraq, the invasion and occupation of Afghanistan, the endless drone attacks against Pakistan, the killing of 19 Pakistani soldiers by U.S. forces, their supposed allies at that border a year ago. All of these elements are contributing to a picture, an atmosphere where there's great rage. And the film, as disgusting as it is, could never have triggered these protests if it wasn't for the larger context here. Everything
you were saying there has been well documented in opinion polls as well, the anti-American sentiment that's been growing for years. Why has Washington failed to nip it in the bud, failed to stop it, failed to do its PR better?
Yeah, I mean, some people call it blowback. I think a more rational explanation would be that people don't want to live under occupation. People don't want foreign military forces to kill them from airplanes, robotic airplanes that they never see. People don't want their soldiers at border crossings to be blown away by U.S. missiles. The American government is handicapped because the essence of its policy is to use military force to pacify or control or to dominate these important, geostrategically important regions. But ultimately, it's the people in the street who suffer, who pay the price. And ultimately and finally, the people become actors in the historical process, and they do it by going into the streets. That's what happens.
On top of that film now, French magazines adding insult to injury by publishing drawings of the Prophet Muhammad, which is obviously further enraging Muslims. Who would want to escalate the unrest this way, and why?
Well, there's two groupings in the West. There's the ultra-rightist, nationalist, anti-Islamic bigots, and also commercial interests who know that by issuing provocative movies or cartoons depicting the Prophet Muhammad in a despicable way, that they will sell magazines. And so we have this kind of ugly confluence of right-wing bigotry and commercial profit-making at the expense of peace, at the expense of the people in the region who have already, as we've said, feel targeted, but now additionally humiliated and insulted. That's a terrible thing, and you see very little being done by the Western governments. They don't have to necessarily suppress these magazines or movies, but they could organize and mobilize and educate the population against them, but they do very little.
I go back to that question a bit earlier. Why didn't Washington see this coming? I mean, Washington's efforts to support the Arab revolutions last year, of course, we witnessed that. Some of those same revolutionaries now are railing against America. Why didn't it see it coming?
Well, that's the other element. You see that the United States makes alliances with any force that has agreed to take up arms against that entity which has been targeted by U.S. foreign policy. You saw that in the case of the socialist government in Afghanistan in 1979. The U.S., the CIA made common cause with Osama bin Laden. They were the ones who funded the Mujahideen. They were the ones who created these networks. They did the same in Yugoslavia when they wanted to bring down the Yugoslav government. They did largely the same thing in the case of Iraq. And then eventually the United States, having manipulated, cynically manipulated and used forces, is unprepared when these same forces follow their own political or religious agenda. But of course, that's the script we've seen played over and over and over again by the United States.
Live from the US Capitol, anti-war activist Brian Becker, thanks for your thoughts on RT.
Thank you.